What if the most effective preventative medicine for your cardiovascular system isn't, sitting in a plastic bottle in your medicine cabinet, but is actually hiding in plain sight on your kitchen counter? Welcome, everyone, to Vpod.ai. I'm your host, Mike, and joining me today is our resident expert, Susan. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So our mission today is to explore this really fascinating, almost immediate physiological chain reaction that happens in your body when you basically swap out the salt shaker for the spice rack.
Right, yeah. It really is an incredible process to unpack.
It turns out that understanding this transition is, well, it's like a shortcut to seeing how simple culinary choices act like microscopic medicine for your circulatory system. We want to frame this for you, the listener, as an empowering look at taking control of your cardiovascular health.
Because taking care of your heart shouldn't mean a lifetime of, enduring bland, uninspired meals.
Exactly. I mean, nobody wants to eat cardboard for 50 years, right?
No, definitely not. And the human body is actually incredibly responsive to what we feed it. The mechanics of flavor, they directly intersect with the mechanics of our vascular health.
So where do we start?
Well, before looking at the active compounds in herbs, it really helps to understand why salt is the antagonist in this story to begin with.
Right. We hear the warning constantly, like, watch your sodium, but why?
The reason behind it comes down to basic physical plumbing. When you consume a heavy amount of sodium, you actively change the chemical equilibrium of your bodily fluid.
Because sodium inherently attracts water, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. If you have an excess of salt molecules just floating through your bloodstream, basic osmosis dictates that those molecules are going to pull surrounding water from your bodily tissues straight into your blood vessels.
Just to dilute the concentration of the salt.
Precisely. You are adding water to a closed circulatory system. The physical network of your veins and arteries hasn't grown, right? But the total volume of fluid rushing through them has subtly increased.
Oh, wow. So you're forcing more liquid through the exact same pipes.
Yes. That extra fluid volume exerts a massive physical force outward. It's pushing aggressively against the muscular walls of your arteries. And that constant outward mechanical stress, well, that is hypertension. It is high blood pressure.
I've always visualized the cardiovascular system like a massive network of garden hoses watering your lawn.
That's a super accurate way to look at it, actually.
Right. So eating a highly processed, really high sodium meal is the equivalent of walking over to the side of the house and cranking the water spigot on full blast while keeping the physical hose the exact same diameter.
Yeah, and if you leave a garden hose out in the elements under that kind of intense internal pressure day in and day out, the rubber inevitably weakens.
It degrades over time.
Exactly. In the human body, the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, the endothelium, it starts to suffer microscopic tears from the sheer force of the fluid.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and your body tries to patch those tears with cholesterol and scar tissue, which eventually forms plaque.
Which narrows the hose even further.
You got it. It compounds the pressure problem until it literally results in a cardiovascular event.
But, and this is the crazy part, the body's filtration system can reverse that pressure incredibly fast if we just stop turning the spigot on full blast, right?
Yes, absolutely. The kidneys are the heroes here. They constantly filter your blood, deciding what to keep and what to excrete as urine.
Okay.
When your sodium intake drops, the kidneys no longer have to hoard water to dilute the salt. They simply open the floodgates and filter that excess fluid out of your blood and into your bladder.
So the total water volume in the bloodstream decreases.
Right. The physical pressure inside the hose drops and your arterial walls can finally stop stretching and just relax.
The timeline for that relief is what really stands out to me. We are so conditioned to think of dietary changes taking like months or even years to manifest.
Oh, I know. But it's actually incredibly fast. Within just one single week of switching from a high-sodium diet to a lower-sodium one, people typically see a drop of 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury in their systolic blood pressure.
Wait, really? 4 to 5 points in a week?
Yeah. And that's the top number on your reading, the one that measures the pressure when the heart is actively squeezing. A drop of 4 to 5 points in 7 days is a highly significant clinical shift.
That is wild.
And the body keeps adapting. By week 4, that top number drops by roughly 8 points from where it started.
So it takes about a month to really reset.
Usually, yeah. It usually plateaus around that 4-week mark, basically establishing a new, healthier baseline strictly dictated by the reduced sodium intake.
Which really brings us to the sheer scale of the environmental problem we're dealing with. Because the average American is consuming over 3,300 milligrams of sodium every single day.
It's a massive amount.
And that's rarely from being heavy-handed with a salt shaker at the dinner table, is it?
No, not at all. It is structurally engineered into packaged foods, processed meats, and fast food. They use it to preserve shelf life and mask cheap ingredients.
Right. And to put that 3,300 milligrams into context, what does the American Heart Association actually recommend?
They recommend a strict limit of 2,300 milligrams a day for a healthy adult.
Wow.
And for anyone who already have high blood pressure or is at an elevated risk, that recommendation drops sharply to 1,500 milligrams a day.
So the average person is walking around consuming more than double the clinical recommendation. They're just keeping their vascular system in a perpetual state of maximum pressure.
Essentially, yes, it's chronic stress on the system.
Okay, so draining that excess water by cutting salt is only the first step. Once the physical pressure drops, those battered arterial walls still need to heal and dilate.
Exactly. And this is where the spice rack completely changes the game.
Because adding herbs to your food goes far beyond just like replacing the flavor of salt, right?
Yeah, far beyond. We are talking about actively deploying natural chemical compounds that physically force the cardiovascular system to relax.
That is so cool.
It really is. The concept of chemical mimicry is fascinating. We often view pharmaceutical drugs as these entirely synthetic modern inventions.
Right, like totally unnatural.
Yeah, but many of the prescription medications used daily to treat hypertension operate using biological mechanisms that exist naturally in culinary plants.
So specific herbs contain active molecules that quite literally parallel the effects of prescription blood pressure medications.
Exactly. They share the same biochemical pathways.
Okay, so if sweet basil is essentially doing the same mechanical job as a pharmaceutical, I want to know exactly how it pulls that off at a microscopic level.
Sure. So sweet basil contains a potent active compound called eugenol.
Eugenol. Okay.
Right. In modern medicine, one of the primary classes of drugs prescribed for hypertension is a calcium channel blocker.
Okay, I've heard of those. How do they work?
Well, the muscle cells that wrap around your blood vessels require calcium ions to physically contract. When calcium floods into the cell, the muscle fibers slide together and tighten the vessel.
So the calcium acts like a trigger.
Yes. By blocking those calcium channels, the muscle cells are starved of the trigger they need to tense up. This forces the blood vessels to remain wide and relaxed. And eugenol functions as a natural calcium channel blocker.
Wait, really? So tossing a handful of fresh basil into a salad is literally delivering a compound that biologically instructs the muscle walls of your arteries to stand down and stop squeezing.
That is exactly what it's doing. And it's not just basil. Coriander contains linalool, and lemongrass contains citrol. All three act as natural calcium channel blockers.
Wow.
Plus, coriander and lemongrass also act as natural diuretics, so they promote urination to help clear out that excess fluid.
That is brilliant. Okay, so if basil and lemongrass work on calcium channels, I'm assuming other herbs target entirely different biological pathways. Because I've read that rosemary acts a bit differently.
It does. Rosemary contains rosmarinic acid, which approaches vascular tension from another angle entirely. It mimics a class of drugs known as ACE inhibitors.
Oh, like Vasotec and those kinds of drugs.
Exactly. ACE stands for angiotensin-converting enzyme. The human body has an ancient survival mechanism designed to prevent you from bleeding out if you are injured.
Right.
When triggered, the body produces an enzyme that rapidly constricts your blood vessels to maintain blood pressure.
Which is great if you're like running from a tiger or severely injured. But in modern life, where we are just chronically stressed and sedentary, that survival mechanism stays switched on, unnecessarily clamping down on our blood vessels when we aren't actually in danger.
Precisely the issue. And rosmarinic acid actively blocks that enzyme from converting.
Oh, wow.
By inhibiting the production of that narrowing chemical, rosemary helps ensure that the vascular pathways stay open and the heart doesn't have to pump against unnecessary resistance.
Okay, I see a pattern here. Basil and lemongrass block the contraction signal. Rosemary blocks the enzyme that causes the tension. But then we have garlic, which seems to work on an entirely different principle of active expansion.
Oh, garlic is legendary for cardiovascular health, and that's mostly because of a volatile sulfur compound called allicin, which is released when the garlic is crushed or chopped.
So what does allicin actually do once you eat it?
When you digest allicin, it interacts directly with the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels and stimulates them to produce a gas known as nitric oxide.
Oh, nitric oxide.
Yeah.
Weightlifters and athletes are always talking about nitric oxide supplements to get a pump and increase blood flow to their muscles.
Yes, and they utilize it because nitric oxide is a powerful vasodilator.
Meaning it opens things up.
Right. Instead of just preventing a contraction, nitric oxide actively commands the smooth muscles surrounding the vessels to widen. It physically increases the diameter of the pipe.
Allowing a much higher volume of blood to flow through with significantly less friction and pressure.
Exactly. It's incredible how nature tackles the exact same plumbing issue from three distinct biological angles.
It really is. Then you have the heavy-hitting roots like ginger and turmeric. We hear about them constantly for joint pain, but how do they factor into blood pressure?
Well, the active compounds in those roots, gingerol in ginger and curcumin in turmeric, are phenomenal for combating oxidative stress and systemic inflammation.
How does that relate to the arteries, though?
Over the course of our lives, highly reactive molecules called free radicals bounce around our bloodstream. Think of them like microscopic rust.
Rust, got it.
They steal electrons from the walls of our blood vessels, causing damage and inflammation.
And as that rust builds up over decades, the arteries physically stiffen, don't they?
Yes, they lose their youthful elasticity, meaning they can't easily expand when the heart pumps a surge of blood through them, which naturally drives blood pressure up.
So how do ginger and turmeric help?
Curcumin and gingerol are massive antioxidants. They essentially flood the bloodstream with spare electrons to neutralize those free radicals, stopping the oxidative damage in its tracks.
Oh, so they act as a buffer.
Exactly. By radically reducing that inflammation, they help the arterial walls maintain their flexibility and compliance as we age.
That makes so much sense. We also have to mention thyme, because it seems like the ultimate multi-tool in all of this.
Thyme is fantastic. It's a perennial that actually contains both eugenol and rosmarinic acid.
Wait, really? Both of them?
Yes. So because it acts as both a calcium channel blocker and an ACE inhibitor, research suggests it is particularly effective at lowering the diastolic number.
Which is that bottom number on your reading, right? The
Yeah.
one that shows the pressure in the vessels when the heart is resting between beats.
Exactly. It's a powerhouse.
Okay, all of this microscopic chemistry sounds like a magic bullet, but I have to play devil's advocate for you, the listener, right now.
I figured a catch was coming. Let's
Yeah.
hear it.
Let's imagine a typical Friday night. I'm exhausted from work, so I throw a heavily processed, highly preserved frozen pizza into the oven. It's loaded with over 2,000 milligrams of sodium.
A classic scenario.
Right. But because I want to protect my heart, I absolutely bury this pizza in dried basil, garlic powder, and fresh rosemary. Does the calcium channel blocking from the basil and the nitric oxide released from the garlic cancel out the massive influx of salt?
It is the ultimate modern health fantasy to believe that healthy additions can act as a biochemical eraser for unhealthy habits.
So that's a no.
That's a no. The reality is that the physiological effects of these herbs, while powerful, are modest in scale. They operate in milligrams and micrograms of active compounds.
While frozen pizza is dumping literal grams of sodium into your system.
Exactly. The brute force of the salt easily overwhelms the subtle chemical signaling of the herbs.
Because the sheer volume of water rushing into the blood vessels to dilute that pizza is still going to stretch those arterial walls to their absolute breaking point.
Right. Regardless of how much nitric oxide the garlic tells the cells to produce, the physical fluid volume is just too high.
Okay, so the herbs aren't a get-out-of-jail-free card.
No, they aren't. The true medicinal value of these spices is unlocked only when they are utilized to replace salt, not sit on top of it.
They are a highly effective alternative, but they are not an antidote to a hyper-processed diet.
Exactly. There is no peer-reviewed evidence suggesting that you can treat clinical hypertension with herbs alone without addressing the foundational lifestyle factors that are causing the vascular damage in the first place.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at the holistic ecosystem of cardiovascular health, because there are no magic loopholes in biology.
None at all. The American Heart Association has very clear, scientifically backed pillars for lowering pressure, and you can see how they all work in tandem to either reduce volume or heal the vessels.
Let's run through those pillars. First is the diet, specifically the DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension.
Right. It's heavily focused on whole grains, produce, and lean proteins while minimizing saturated fats.
And the biological mechanism of the DASH diet is brilliant, because it isn't just about avoiding salt, is it?
No, it's about actively consuming potassium. Potassium acts as the biological counterbalance to sodium.
Oh, interesting. How does it do that?
While sodium pulls water into the bloodstream, potassium helps pull sodium out of the cells and pushes it toward the kidneys to be excreted.
So it actively helps drain the system.
Yes. Furthermore, the high fiber content in the whole grains physically binds to cholesterol in the digestive tract, sweeping it out of the body before it can enter the bloodstream and form plaque on those arterial walls.
It's like a scrub brush for your system.
Mm.
Okay, then you have the alcohol limitation, which is capped at 2 drinks a day for men and 1 for women. We culturally associate alcohol with relaxing and unwinding, but chemically it has a vicious rebound effect on blood pressure, doesn't it?
It does. It is entirely counterproductive to vascular health in large amounts.
Really, even though people say a glass of wine is good for the heart.
Well, while a single drink might temporarily cause blood vessels to dilate, excess alcohol severely overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system.
The fight or flight system.
Exactly. It triggers the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which cause the heart to beat faster and the blood vessels to violently constrict. Chronic alcohol consumption forces the cardiovascular system into a prolonged state of high alert.
Wow, okay. The next movement pillar requires 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week, which breaks down to just over 20 minutes a day.
Right. Completely manageable.
But it's not just about burning calories, is it? Cardiovascular exercise actually physically remodels the heart muscle.
It does. Over time, aerobic stress causes the left ventricle of the heart to thicken and strengthen in a healthy way.
Meaning a stronger heart can pump a much larger volume of blood with a single effortless squeeze.
Yes, because the heart doesn't have to work as hard or beat as fast, the resting pressure on your arteries plummets.
That makes total sense.
Plus, exercise also promotes angiogenesis.
Angiogenesis.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's the physical growth of entirely new, tiny blood vessels. By increasing the size of the capillary network, you give more pathways to flow through, dispersing the fluid over a wider area and directly lowering the system's overall pressure.
So you're quite literally building more hoses to handle the water pressure.
Exactly. It's an amazing adaptation.
And finally, there is the smoking cessation. Because you could have a flawless diet, utilize every herb in the spice rack, and run 3 miles a day. But smoking actively destroys the physical infrastructure of the blood vessels.
It really does. Cigarette smoke contains thousands of toxic chemicals that enter the bloodstream and act almost like microscopic sandpaper.
That sounds awful.
It is. They physically abrade the delicate endothelial cells lining the arteries. This constant chemical scratching creates potholes along the arterial walls.
And let me guess, those potholes are exactly where cholesterol and inflammatory cells get trapped.
Exactly. It rapidly accelerates the buildup of stiff, hardened plaque. Smoking effectively cancels out all the vascular relaxation that herbs provide.
Right. But when you combine those healthy lifestyle pillars with a reduction in sodium, the math behind the physical healing is incredibly empowering.
It really is.
It is one of the few areas in human biology where your conscious actions yield a highly predictable, linear return on investment. It's a direct math equation you can control.
Exactly. For every 1,000 milligrams of sodium you permanently remove from your daily intake, your systolic blood pressure will reliably drop by 3 to 5 points.
That is amazing.
It is a mathematical certainty dictated by fluid dynamics. If you shift your lifestyle from heavily processed, boxed meals to cooking whole foods seasoned with herbs, you can easily cut 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day.
And that translates to a 5 to 10 point drop in your top number.
Yes. You aren't just crossing your fingers and hoping for a change. You are structurally engineering a drop in pressure by draining the excess fluid volume from your system.
The ultimate takeaway for you listening right now is that culinary enjoyment and cardiovascular longevity are not mutually exclusive.
Not at all.
By swapping out the salt shaker for the spice rack, you are executing a brilliant two-pronged biological strategy.
Right?
First, you are physically reducing the dangerous fluid pressure, stretching your vascular plummet.
Right.
Second, you're actively infusing your bloodstream with potent natural compounds that instruct your arteries to relax, dilate, and heal from oxidative damage.
You basically transform your kitchen from a place of passive consumption into a preventative pharmacy.
I love that phrase, a preventative pharmacy.
Because it's true, the eugenols, the allicins, the rosmarinic acids, these aren't just flavor profiles, They are active biological agents protecting your endothelium.
It fundamentally changes the way you look at a simple home-cooked meal. But before we wrap up, this deep physiological connection raises an incredible lingering question. And this is something for you to ponder the next time you are standing at the stove prepping dinner.
I think I know what you're getting at, the chemistry of cooking itself, right?
Exactly. Given that these herbs contain these highly potent active compounds that literally mimic prescription blood pressure medications, how does the application of intense heat alter their molecular structure?
That is the big unknown.
Right. If I take fresh raw basil and boil it for 3 hours in a heavy tomato sauce, or if I take raw garlic and roast it at 450 degrees until it becomes sweet and caramelized, am I destroying the very chemicals I'm trying to ingest?
That's a very valid concern.
Does the raw form hold medicinal power that a high heat sear completely obliterates?
The transformation of molecules through heat is an entire scientific frontier on its own. It's a brilliant variable to consider when building your meals.
It's definitely something to keep in mind while you're deciding whether to toss that fresh rosemary into the scorching roasting pan or, just save it as a delicate raw garnish at the very end. Well, thank you all for joining us for this conversation today. We really hope you walk away feeling thoroughly empowered to take control of your cardiovascular health and that you look at your spice rack in a whole new medicinal light. Until next time, keep exploring and keep cooking.